But we begin tonight with the president summoning all of the Senate Democrats and Joe Lieberman to the White House this afternoon to push for health reform. The president emerged from that meeting still making the case for health reform, still saying it would be a good thing to pass and a bad thing to not pass. But does it sound to you like, after talking to the 60 people responsible for getting this thing passed, that he thinks it will pass?
There is still work to be done in the next few days. I think it's important for every single member of the Senate to take a careful look at what's in the bill. I'm feeling cautiously optimistic that we can get this done and start rolling up our sleeves and getting to work improving the lives of the American people.
The president's renewed insistence that health reform be passed today, somewhat leavened by his declared caution in saying that he thinks it will. The vice president appeared on this network this morning on Morning Joe, and he reminded the conservatives and Senator I can't wait to join a Republican filibuster, Joe Lieberman, how important health reform is to the president and to the country. Joe Biden essentially dared Senator Lieberman to keep blocking this.
I think people are on the Hill, if they don't fear him, are underestimating the steel in this guy's spine. This, to him, is the single most important thing that can get done now. And I think any Democrat who decides for their own shallow purposes, if that were the case, to scuttle this is not going to have the southern parts of our states, Joe, not going to have a friend in the Lord.
Veiled threats and voiced caution aside, Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois, the Democratic whip, the guy who counts the votes, says today that he thinks there will be 60 votes for reform by next week. The question is, what is going to have to be given up in the dream of reform in order to get all 60 of those votes? What exactly will health reform look like once it's tailored to the frequently changing whims of the independent senator from Connecticut? Well, Senator Lieberman himself offered one hint today.
If, as appears to be happening, the so-called public option government-run insurance program is out and the Medicare buy-in is out and there's no other attempts to bring things like that in, I'm getting to that position where I can say what I wanted to say all along, then I'm ready to vote for health care reform.
So no public option, no Medicare buy-in, and we might be in business. Yay? Former DNC Chairman Howard Dean and Marcos Melitsas, founder of the influential lefty website Daily Kos, and some others on the left today, reacted to the downgrading of health reform by saying the bill should now be killed. The president and Democratic members of Congress now facing a situation in which they'll have to hope they haven't so alienated and disappointed the Democratic base that they will lose health reform because they traded away everything that made liberals like the idea of it in the first place. Here now, I'm guessing to tell me that I'm wrong about that, is Senator Tom Harkin, Democrat of Iowa, chairman of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. Senator Harkin, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Nice to be with you, Rachel.
Am I wrong? The liberal base seems to me to be cracking over this. Is it a real worry?
Well, look, we've always been concerned about that, but we have a really good bill here. And I'll put my progressive credentials up against anyone's in the entire United States Congress. Now, look, that old adage about don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, I think that's what we're confronting here. If I might use an analogy, what we're buying here, Rachel, is not a mansion. We're buying a modest home, but it's got a great foundation. Think about that. We're going to cover 31 million more Americans. We're going to extend this kind of coverage. We're going to help small businesses. We have the most progressive wellness and prevention policies we've ever passed in this Congress, in that bill. It's got a nice roof, too, because it protects a lot of people. We crack down on these terrible abuses by insurance companies. But the key to this is that this modest home, we can put additions onto it in the future. But if we don't have the starter home, we're never going to be able to put those additions on. The time is now. I plead with all of my progressive friends, now is the time to get over this hurdle. If this bill, Rachel, were so bad, why are 40 Republicans on the Hill going after it day after day after day and trying to kill it?
They would be going day after day after day against a vote to approve apple pie as a positive thing right now. They're willing and obstructing anything associated with this president or with Democrats. Liberals are worried that this is going to essentially buy health insurance companies 30 or 40 million new customers without protections that the American people want to make sure that we have some more of a say against what we feel is an industry that's really dominated by the insurance companies.
Well, first, as I said, this is not the 10 Commandments written in stone.
Yeah.
This is the law. We change laws. Social Security is different today than when it was passed. So is Medicare. So is a lot of things. These things will change as we go ahead. But we're never going to get to that unless we break the back of the health insurance industry that's been strangling us for years. That's what this bill does.
How?
Oh, my gosh. First of all the insurance reforms that we have in there. I can go back to Iowa. After this bill passes, and I can go back and look a woman in the eye in Iowa and say, no longer can an insurance company discriminate against you because you're a woman. I can go to a family and say, if you lose your job, you're not going to lose your coverage. You'll keep your coverage. I can go to a small business that's being strangled in my state because they have maybe one insurance company that will cover them. And I can say, now you're going to be able to go on the exchange. You'll have a lot of different insurance companies bidding for your business. Now, that puts you in the driver's seat. There's a lot of good stuff in here for the American people.
On the issue of what can be achieved now, the perfect not being the enemy of the good, as you said, there's been a lot of talk about the prospect of reconciliation, that a much more progressive bill could be passed if you went to reconciliation. And, of course, that has implications. You couldn't pass any of those insurance reforms that you just described.
That's exactly.
You could pass an expansion of Medicare, expansion of Medicaid, expansion of S-chip, maybe public option, a lot of the other things that progressives have really been interested in.
Yes.
Aren't those insurance reforms you just described so popular that those could pass as a separate thing?
I've heard that before, but I'm not certain about that. I mean, it would take a whole other legislative process. We've got a lot on our plate for next year that we're going to have to be dealing with next year, Rachel. In my own committee, I've got the Elementary and Secondary Education Act that we've got to do. We've got a whole jobs bill that we've got to work on next year. There's a lot of things lined up that we have to do. And we're going to go back and start over again? I don't think. If we were to go to this reconciliation route, first of all, I don't know that we'd ever get this in reconciliation. And secondly, I don't know that we'd ever get the other good things we got, like the prevention and wellness programs and cracking down on insurance company abuses. And another thing that's not talked about that we have in this bill is we're moving in this bill towards a quality-based reimbursement system rather than a quantity-based reinsurance system. You won't get that in reconciliation. So I'm telling you, I got to tell you, we're going to get to 60 votes. We're going to get to 60 votes.
You're going to get Ben Nelson and Joe Lieberman.
Absolutely.
Are you more likely to get a Republican like Senator Collins or Senator Snowe than you are to get Senator Nelson or Senator Lieberman at this point?
Not at this point. Not at this point. And we have to get this done now. We're so close to getting over this hurdle. Yes. Do I like everything in this bill? No. I would much rather have had a public option. I have been one of the strongest fighters for a public option. I was a strong fighter for reducing the age, the buy-in for Medicare that Howard Dean was talking about. But I'm a realist. I don't have the votes. So do I chuck everything out the door? No. Let's get this thing done. And then in the future, next year and the year after and the year after, let's come back and put those additions on this modest house.
Are you worried about the polling that suggests that without a public option, which progressives and actually a majority of Americans quite like the sound of,
absolutely,
without that the Democrats who might otherwise turn out in 2010 are going to sit on their hands? They're going to be unenthused. They're going to say, well, the Senate Democrats had 60 votes and they still couldn't get it done. Why are we going to be turned out? Are you worried about it dampening enthusiasm unless there is something quite progressive coming up very soon to brag about?
Well, I think this bill is progressive, Rachel. I mean, the things that we have in this bill move us so far from where we are today in so many ways. Kids being covered, as I mentioned, moving towards quality reimbursements, the crackdown on insurance company abuses. This is all very progressive. It's been overshadowed by the fight for the public option, which, as you know, I supported, or the Medicare buy-in. But we shouldn't let those two just doom the whole bill. There's still a lot of... And I think when the Democratic Party base out there, that I care very much about, when they begin to learn more and more as we go into next year what's really in this bill and how this works, I believe they're going to say, they did a pretty darn good job.
Senator Tom Harkin, Democrat of Iowa, chair of the Health, Education, Labor, Pensions Committee. Thank you for your time. Good luck, sir.
Thank you, Rachel.